Hey everyone, how's it going? It's our June, and I'm here with my buddy Shamir for episode. What episode are we on now?
7.
7 of the Detroit Gamesters podcast. Pretty excited to talk about a couple things here. We don't have as much because there's not as much going on, but still some
Yeah,
exciting news nonetheless.
I know we've been trying to stick with like our 2-week format, but I don't know. There's just been some, not a lot, but a couple of really interesting developments that really speak to us that we had to talk about.
Yeah.
So definitely we're going to be talking about Marathon, Oblivion, some of the big news pieces. But I think first we'll, kind of catch everybody up to speed on what we've been up to.
Yeah, maybe talk about what we've been playing. Just a quick little um, intro on that. So
Yeah, so I know me and you have tried to play some more Split Fiction. What are we, like 30% into the game now?
yeah, I'd say 30%, maybe a third. Yeah.
Yeah, we're like in the fantasy land now, and I'm a monkey and you're a fairy.
Yeah,
But then I
yeah.
randomly will turn into a fish.
And I can turn into Groot.
I think it's actually an otter, but I like to call it a fish.
And I like the Groot powers. I like that.
But it's such a like 1-to-1 knockoff. Like that
Yeah,
is totally Groot. Like how do you not get sued for that?
There's definitely stuff in this game that they've copied and ripped off, and I'm like, did you get permission to do this, or is it generic enough that you don't need to like consult?
Well, it's kind of creativity. Like, everyone rips off of everybody.
Yeah.
God knows I've ripped off a lot of people in my writing, so.
Wow, you don't give them credit?
Never. But so what do you think now that we're a little bit farther into Split Fiction? We're past the first main area that's all cybernetic and whatnot. What are you thinking now? Do you feel like your opinions changed on the game a bit, or the
I
same?
feel like this game just feels so much like a prototype. Really, like, hey, we had a lot of different ideas. They seem somewhat disparate, and it's like none of it is really fleshed out. And because you move from section to section pretty quickly, especially with the side missions they have, which also diversify it a little bit, it doesn't feel like a real game to me. Like, I don't feel like I'm having that much fun in a sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mishmash of different ideas.
Yeah.
With like a narrative, connecting everything.
Yeah, but it is polished, so it doesn't feel like a demo, but I still get a prototype like vibe, and I can't like hate on it and say, wow, this is like a bad game. It's just the nines. I don't know if they're just it's all subjective. I get that, but I don't know, man. I just, maybe we need to play a little more. Maybe I have to get halfway through the game.
Yeah.
But if it hasn't caught my attention by this point, it's like, I don't know.
I think I'm still sticking with like my solid 8 for the game, which just ends up being what I consider most games. For me, I will say that the banter between the characters are good. I do find the characters interesting. The overall premise is fascinating. And there's enough gameplay variety that like I'm always getting some sort of dopamine rush. But there just doesn't seem to be any stakes. There's no tension. Like, why do I really care? It's a simulation. And I feel like with any simulation story, it's really hard to make the reader, the viewer, the gamer like feel on edge. Like Matrix did it well, right? Because like with Matrix, like the simulation really mattered, right? Because you could see the real world effects and like life was on the line and all those type of things. But if you're just completely only in a simulation, like then it doesn't really matter if the characters die. It doesn't really matter if the characters feel pain because that's not real.
Yeah, and I feel like you hit the nail on the head because we said it last time, but I feel like if you remove the narrative elements, this would feel still the same to me because it feels like an arcade type of game. Yeah. Like you don't need the narrative elements to be there to continue experiencing what we're experiencing, I feel like. So I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, I feel like the narrative, like the writers, like, the banter, the characters feeling really authentic, like that really elevates the game for me.
Yeah.
But like strictly from a gameplay perspective, other than like constant variety, like I'm not enjoying the moment to moment as much. Like I like the fact that I'm not ever doing one thing too long, so I'm not getting like super bored. But at the same time, I'm not super excited.
Yeah,
I'm just kind of like in between. Like it's not like I'm having a bad time. It's not like I'm having an amazing time. I'm just playing a game.
But again, that it goes back to so the funny thing is the gameplay is tied to a narrative decision to say, hey, two people have written multiple stories, and to experience all the stories, you have to have a bunch of different gameplay. So the two are tied and connected, right? But again, if they gave me 5 mini games and said, hey, just play these 5 games and they're like a boss rush mode, or they're just 5 straight up like different modes in a game title.
Yeah, like how much would you really lose?
Yeah.
I think maybe as we get further, like the story will have more stakes because like things are starting to heat up a little bit. Like you're seeing like the effects of kind of spoilers, but glitches and things like that.
Yeah.
So it is starting to develop into a cooler place, and I'm starting to see more of the tension between the characters. But to me, it's still an 8, and I know I'm sounding kind of sad or like down on the game. I think it's just because I was so looking forward to this as one of the few like cooperative experiences. Putting split screen on the map. Like I was really, really looking forward to this. It's
Yeah.
totally my that the story premise is
Yeah.
totally something I'd be interested in as a writer. And an 8 is fine. It's a good game. I'll recommend it to people. It's just I really thought I would be enjoying myself more than I am.
Yeah, and kind of, I don't harp on this often, but and this is more of a reminder for myself, but really for me and for people out there, do your research before you buy a game. Don't just stick to one outlet. Even just using Metacritic and OpenCritic, because this was pretty high up there. It's like watch a ton of videos.
Open Critic is normally a good barometer for me. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I normally agree, but if I had to give this an Open Critic score, like I would expect like an 83. Like
Yeah,
that's
I'm,
where
I'm
I'm
somewhere
at.
between like a 70 and 83. Like it's solid. And again, I probably if I didn't have this game to play with you, I probably would have done more research to say, do I really want this right now? Is this the game I want to spend $70 or $50 or whatever on? Again, it's great that it gives you a friend pass, but um, it's just like it's so hard to tell. Like again, biases and the media that play these games and the types of games they're looking for. It's not difficult by any stretch. So the complexity really isn't there. So again, as a person who's reviewing the game, hey, I can get through the game easy enough, and it's all based on my experience, and I'm not struggling with
Yeah,
it.
I
Like,
feel like if you're playing this game with someone who's not a huge gamer,
yeah,
like then it's kind of nice because
it's
you can
nice.
like introduce them into your world.
It's enjoyable.
But like, I mean, I feel like it goes with we're kind of hardcore gamers.
Yeah,
Like we
so-
game a lot. We have a freaking gaming podcast, so like I like playing things on hard mode. Like I'm
Exactly.
glued in. Like I've played so many games. So for me, like I think about how much of a dopamine rush I get when I play like Black Myth Wukong.
Yeah.
Like I'm dialed in. Or like Call of Duty. Like I'm dialed
Yeah.
in, and I get like there's different games that are gonna have different niches they fill, but I'm just not getting that same like need met. And the thing is, like, I actually felt like I got that with Super Mario Wonder. Because Super Mario Wonder can be really hard at times.
Really?
And even Astrobot, even though Astrobot wasn't challenging, like it was just like a burst of joy. So
Yeah.
I was just always having endorphins. And maybe this is a problem with me. I sound like a drug addict, but it's like I need like a rush,
Well,
and I've just gotten so used to that with games. And this is just kind of like it feels like a chill summer Saturday when you
Yeah.
got nothing to do and you're just
I enjoyed, again, if we had to compare, and we said this too, but TMNT, Shredder's Revenge, and Battletoads, man, especially Battletoads, was such a high.
I think I had
it was
the most.
such a rush.
I had the most fun
And-
playing Battletoads.
Yeah,
on hard
Battletoads,
mode.
like not only okay, yes, it was hard, but yeah, I think there was a difficulty level there. I couldn't. I can't
I picked the
remember.
hardest difficulty.
Yeah, you did, but like,
and it was hard.
and I'm not like great at games, but like, man, when we got past a specific
Oh,
portion
it
of a
was
level,
so satisfying.
oh my god, yeah, was this so satisfying?
And I think that's such an underrated gem. Like I do understand the fact that it didn't have like online co-op, which I really think will kill the game. But if you got somebody to play with and you can do split screen, like I'm telling you, play that game on hard mode, like split screen, you are gonna have a blast.
And so again, now compare the two and say Battletoads had a very small story compared to Split Fiction's more, a complex narrative. To me, gameplay is always king. So yes, I love a great narrative story. It's cool and all, but man, gameplay first is number one for me, and it shows with Battletoads, especially, and even again TMNT.
Yeah,
I
think for me, I would probably rank it number one for me with Battletoads. I actually think I might have liked this game more than TMNT, which might sound like a ridiculous thing. TMNT was really good, but I am not that into TMNT overall. Like I did grow up with it a bit, but like not super grew up with it. And I I don't know, like it didn't click for me the same way as like Battletoads did, because like Battletoads had like more variety, and this just really felt like an older school arcade game. And I was like, when I play this type of game, like I want to go out to like barcade, like I want to go to a place where I can be social and like have a beer and like drink, like play an actual arcade game.
TMNT.
Yeah, and I mean, so that's why for me I'd rank it a little bit lower. Just with Split Fiction, like anything that can make my creative juices flow, like I'm in it for that. And this game does get my creative juices flowing a bit, so I gotta rank it up a little higher. But I think that's just my niche opinion. Like I think
Sure.
objectively, people just absolutely love TMNT. It was a freaking great
Yeah,
game.
yeah, that's fair. Like I said, I hope we'll experience a little bit more as we play this game, and we'll start to enjoy it a lot more. Hopefully as we get maybe halfway through the game. But
Yeah.
if we hit like 75% and it's still the same, then I think my opinion won't be unchanged, and I'd give it a 7, probably
Yeah,
a
I mean, I
10.
feel like I'm kind of at a wall right now. Like, I don't really have the motivation to keep
Yeah,
playing, especially
yeah,
when there's so many other things on the horizon.
yeah.
So I guess we can kind of go to that next. I know you haven't gotten a chance to play it yet, but I have really been digging into South of Midnight, and I got a lot of feelings about this game. Honestly, like
Why is it?
I'm
Because
still
the
processing it.
is it the gameplay, the combat?
It's I don't know. It's just different. Like it's it's not. I didn't get what I thought I was getting. And I don't think that's a problem with the developer. Like maybe I set myself up for failure. There was the voice in the back of my head that kept saying, "This is, Southern Black American God of War," even though obviously I know it's not. But
I'm different. Yeah, I'm
but
different.
anyways, when I first started the game, honestly, I would say it was a 7 out of 10 experience for me. I realized that there's some settings I think everyone should probably change as soon as they start playing the game, and I didn't. And so for me, I thought the game was clunky. I
Okay.
thought it was running at 30 frames per second.
Okay.
The stop motion was cool, but it felt more like a novelty. And I felt like I was dropping frames all the time, and it just didn't
During
feel like
combat
a
or during the cutscene?
like transitioning between cutscenes and combat. Like it just didn't feel like the frame pacing was right, or I don't know. I'm not Digital Foundry,
Yeah,
but it just didn't feel like a polished game,
I'm surprised they went with stop
and
motion for the
and it was
cutscenes.
really strange to me because fidelity rise in terms of art style and graphics. Like man, this game looks beautiful. Like this is actually one of those games where there's a lot of moments where I want to actually use a photo mode, and I will never use a photo mode in the game because I think it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
But there was actually moments where I was like, man, this is a beautiful environment. Like this looks dope, right?
Okay.
But in spite of that, I was like, why is this just not working for me? And then eventually I turned off the stop motion, whatever setting it
Oh,
was.
you can?
Yeah, you can change it. And it's not going to affect the video, the movies, like the cutscenes,
The
but it will
preview.
affect the gameplay.
Oh.
And man, it felt so much smoother. And then I also changed it so sprint is auto enabled, and so that made everything feel so much smoother because there seemed to be a lag between, and this is such minute things, but it actually makes a difference. Like when I play Black Myth Wukong, it feels really smooth whether I'm running or walking and transitioning between the two. But with this game, it just always felt like there was a little bit of a lag. But after I turned that setting and now it's just auto sprint enabled, it feels smoother. It's running smoother. I had to change some of the camera settings so it would only lock on to things when I wanted them on screen. Because what would happen from the default setting is you could lock on to things behind you, and if you weren't careful with how you use the thumbstick, you could like alternate really quickly between them, which has its benefit. But the way I like to do it, like I've gotten really good at knowing the timing of when the enemy from behind me is going to attack. So I would rather just go pure on instinct and know when to dodge. And now I'm really kind of not locking on. And honestly, with all that said, I actually think the combat is really good. I did not expect that. I thought the combat was going to be the weakest point of this game, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm playing it on hard mode, and it is freaking hard. Like, this is a very challenging game on hard mode, and I did not expect that. And similar, it was a 7 out of 10 experience with me because I just felt like I was clunky, slow, like I wasn't able to be as aggressive as I wanted to be. Later in the game, you get an ability that's like a double dash. And that completely changes the game. And I'm just like, wow, this is so much smoother. Like I can actually like tally up attacks, go in and out, like, I'm way more effective. And that's one of my first criticism of the game from the gameplay perspective, because there's not a lot of variety in the different builds you can do for the character and you can't really tweak them in any specific way. It feels like some fundamental skills the character should have are locked behind progression. Like you get your basic repertoire of attacks pretty quickly, but things like being able to dodge really quickly, like ways to heal your health in combat by performing like certain button combos and skill combos, like to me that's more fundamental stuff that would have made the gameplay a lot more fun for the first few hours, and I didn't get that until probably closer to like 30 to 40% through the game. After that, the gameplay felt so much better to me. It was easily an 8 out of 10. having a blast with the game combat. Now, other things, I think it's the exploration and the platforming is good enough. It's not really hard platforming, and there's just enough exploration that it doesn't feel linear. But the exploration is like super obvious.
Okay.
Like you'll press a button, there's a straight line you go, and if you literally find any area where there's another branch, like another place to walk, you walk there for a few seconds and you'll find like a pickup.
Okay.
So it's
It's fairly
a
linear.
little better than linear, but it's still pretty basic.
Okay.
And I think the one of the other criticisms I had for the game was when you go into a combat zone, you always know what to expect because every single time, like you have to initiate the battle, and it's going to be a wave like encounter. So you're not just finding enemies that pop up out of nowhere. So because of that, when you're walking around the world, there is no tension. You're just chilling, and you know exactly when you're going to fight an enemy.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter how much health you have going
It's
in.
like choreographed.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter how much health you have going into the battle because if you die, you restart with full health.
Oh yeah.
So it doesn't really matter if you fail at the platforming. And so because of that, after a while, if the game feels repetitive, and it's a shame because a lot of reviewers were saying, hey, the combat feels repetitive. And I think one of the reasons it feels repetitive is even in the beginning when you are having a lot of new moves, coming to you, you're having a lot of new enemies, it feels repetitive already because of the structure of the combat encounter. So that would have been an easy fix. And I think like that's one thing that really hurts the game. The things I like about the game, I actually think Compulsion are pretty good writers. Like the actual characters are interesting. I think the main character has like just enough like, spunk to her. And I know in Forspoken, the character was kind of an asshole and no one liked her. And this, I feel like Compulsion nailed it. Like she has just enough spunk, but still feels good-hearted. That it feels like a good character. And the banter between her and the fish is just amazing.
Think about that. Like you just compared it to Forspoken. Like had they made it just bad enough, that could have been the difference between an 8 and a 6 for you.
Oh yeah.
Like you know what I'm saying? Because that ruined Forspoken.
But it's a fine line, and they nailed it. I think the character is fantastic. And she really does feel like a high schooler. She feels immature in certain ways. And so I think they did a great job with her. I think some of the side characters aren't as fascinating for me, like some of the little side stories. I think the fish is amazing. I think it's hilarious. And the whole game is just dripping with so much style and like pizzazz. And it's just so fascinating. The world. And then just like all these folklore elements that I didn't even know, like, kind of spoilers. I don't really think it is because it's all over the trailers. But instead of like a werewolf, they have like a were-owl. Which, I just have to say, in one of my books, I actually kind of have a were-owl, and this is before I played the game. So I'm just saying, two great minds came to the same idea on their own.
Well, someone did it first. It was them.
Okay, fine. It's because I'm not published yet. But that's so cool. It's like a freaking were-owl. Like it's like familiar but different enough. So I'm enjoying that, and I think it's nice that it's kind of a shorter game. I'm actually 70% of the way through.
And you've played how many hours?
Maybe like 6-7 hours. I think the whole game is like 10 to 12 hours, which is kind of perfect.
Good. That's actually, to me, this looks, and I haven't played it yet, but it looks like a Game Pass game. Like
this is the perfect Game Pass game because I don't know how this game could survive without a Game Pass model.
Yeah,
because I especially nowadays with the anti-woke like backlash, that's working against it. It's not an established IP. There's already a lot of Microsoft hate. Yeah. It's not like a full game, like a $60, $70 experience that you're going to get a lot of gameplay out of.
It's not a multiplayer game.
Yeah, it's not a multiplayer game. There's at least, I don't know, maybe there's a lot of replayability, but it doesn't seem like there's a ton of replayability. So I really feel like this would be a perfect Game Pass game because if there wasn't Game Pass, I don't know how Compulsion could pitch and create this game.
Yeah.
And this game reminds me a lot about Psychonauts. To me, Psychonauts is better, but this feels like Psychonauts at times, because it kind of feels like a 360 game, like it's a little linear, it's a little clunky, but it has so much style, right, and substance, and it's fun.
What was the game that Compulsion released before this?
I think it was We Happy Few.
Oh yeah, we have a few, and I wonder how long it took to develop this game. Like, if they can release a game every like 2 to 3 years on a cadence of this scope, like I think that that studio
So
is primed
so that's what I was gonna
uh,
get to next. I
to
think
survive.
that's why I feel weird about this game because just so many mixed feelings. They took a long time to create this game, and to me, and maybe this will be an unpopular opinion, like this doesn't feel like the game that you make after Microsoft gives you like a nice check to make what
Yeah,
you want. This feels like the game that you make to get Microsoft's interest, so then they'll acquire you, and then they'll give you a
yeah.
bunch of
Then
money to expand. You
well,
know,
it's
and so that's what I'm kind of wondering about because there's really places where I see a lot of talent, but in other ways where I feel like this is like the first game for the studio,
yeah,
you
but
know?
it's
Like
weird
it feels kind of
because
rough.
If Microsoft looked at it and they pitched it, it's like, hey, here's the one thing we think will appeal to a lot of our casual gamers, which is the combat. I think, and I think that was the one sticking point where they said, okay, you have a narrative, a semi decent narrative, or
Well, I think
something.
the pitch was terrific. I mean, it's such a fascinating idea,
Yeah,
you know?
but even then, like, how many casual gamers are going to be like, oh my god,
Oh,
that's so
yeah.
amazing. I think the combat is what's probably getting most people in. But if the combat doesn't really get flexible until halfway or a third through the
No.
game, that's obviously
Well,
a
I think,
problem.
like, especially now, like with Souls games, like the bar for combat is so high, like, people will be disappointed
Yeah,
if they're
and may
looking
even
for that.
drop it.
I
Yeah,
really think if you want to play this game, it's because you're looking for a cool setting. Like,
yeah,
if you want a cool setting and, like, a taste of Southern, like, culture, like, I don't think there's any other really game you can get it
oh
from.
yeah. I don't think
So
there's any of it.
there's no other competition. So,
I'll play
and
it.
especially with Game Pass, like I definitely think it's worth checking out. But I think 78 makes sense for the game.
Okay.
I think it's kind of an 8 out of 10 experience for me, which is close enough to
Well, I
78.
guess now the question is, as you've been playing, what do you like better, this or Split Fiction?
Honestly, I'm enjoying South of Midnight more,
Then this is higher than a 78. You
which
know.
sounds crazy to me to say. I don't know. Maybe this is my cognitive bias, and I'm like, how can I like put South of Midnight over Split Fiction? I think for me, I think of the things like objective and subjectively. Like subjectively, I'm enjoying South of Midnight so much more than Split Fiction,
Mm.
but I think objectively, like Split Fiction is the more polished, better game. It's just I'm not enjoying it as much, you know.
Okay. I mean, to me, all the review scores are subjective, anyways. So again,
Like I'll say this, like I'm looking forward to beating South of Midnight. Like if I'm playing the game and I have to stop, then I'm like, oh man, I kind of want to get back into
yeah.
it.
If you don't
I
have
don't
that feeling with
feel
Split
the
Fiction,
same way with Split Fiction. Like for Split Fiction, I'm like, okay, like me and you are playing, let's have a beer, let's chill,
yeah,
and then it's fun, but that's because it's fun because like I'm chilling,
yeah,
like just like if you were hanging out and we're like, oh, let's put on a movie.
yeah.
So
So okay,
I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, I do think for me it's been a more enjoyable experience.
that's good. Well, as long as you're having fun.
And I guess the last thing I wanted to say was I really don't know about the future of Compulsion because if we weren't in a world where Hi-Fi Rush got canceled, I would actually be really happy with this game. I'd be
Okay.
like, look, they got acquired, they took a swing at something unique. I think for the most part, they succeeded. They're going to take some learnings from this, and either they'll make a South of Midnight 2 or something
Right.
completely different. But to me, like if this game kind of feels like a double A game, like Hi-Fi Rush did, and Hi-Fi Rush is way better,
Yeah, they're
and
really
that
good.
studio got canceled. I don't know. And then like I don't want them to be canceled because I love the fact they're doing something creative, and no one does creative things anymore. But then if they continue to have a chance, and Tango did it, like I'm gonna be pissed because of that.
Yeah, that'd be
So
weird.
that's why I just have so many like mixed feelings about this game.
Yeah, because you think again, just to go off on a side tangent, you're just like, why didn't you just keep the small team that made Hi-Fi Rush, let them do the second part, get rid of fine the rest of the team, but say we're gonna still keep this one IP. Like we don't want anything else but Hi-Fi. Like I didn't understand why they couldn't
I
have done
know, and
that.
it's like, yeah, unless they're cooking something else, I don't know. But
Hard to say.
if they're gonna take like another 4 to 5 years to make a game, like, look, I want Microsoft to support them and make more games. But then in the back of my mind, I'd be like, why can't you have done this with the
Well,
studio and the game I loved?
you look at it was rare that made Sea of Thieves, right?
Yeah,
You look at them, and I think I just heard this stat recently that that game sold 13 million units on PC alone on Steam, and then like less than 1 million or so on PlayStation. So overall, plus combining Xbox, it sold so well that a game like
Yeah.
you look at Sea of Thieves and then you look at South by Midnight, and you go, okay, maybe I see some similarities in terms of again scope and like
Yeah.
how
Dude,
dense the game is.
I
And
have
it's
to
like,
say, Sea of Thieves is probably one of the most smashing, surprising successes of last generation
Right.
and this generation.
But that
You remember when it came out and how
Yeah.
everyone felt about it?
Yeah, it's such a weird game. But like, you know, you look at it and you go, well, that allowed Rare to survive for so long to the point that they haven't released another game since.
Yeah.
But then you look at Compulsion and you go, well, will this survive? And obviously, we're getting the Xbox Showcase this summer. They've announced that. And I wonder if they'll already show, hey, either DLC expansion to maybe story to the game, or maybe here's just our next game we're already working on. Like,
For Compulsion?
yeah, because we're already seeing so much output from all these studios so fast. You never know.
You know, and I think if they find themselves in a niche where they're just pumping out like a bunch of double A's like every 2 to 3 years, I'm fine with that because Microsoft has enough for like 10 pole flagship game franchises that they don't need South of Midnight to be like a massive AAA,
Yeah.
swing. But I just, again, if you gave them a chance and you don't give Hi-Fi Rush, but whatever, I'll get off my soapbox, because, at least we were able to enjoy both.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of catches us up with what we've been playing.
Yeah.
How about things we've been watching?
Yeah, so maybe we can talk about that. I've been watching. Well, let's start with this Last of Us because it's also video game related. So the first episode of season 2 just premiered, and we both watched that together. Interesting.
Spoilers: this man still hasn't played Last of
I
Us
still
2,
haven't
even
played
though
Last
I've
of Us
been
2.
harassing him for years.
I've seen many clips on YouTube. I understand a lot of what's gone on. I don't know what happens in the middle of that game, but I know a good amount. Interesting enough, seeing some comparison videos, it seems like a lot of it was 1-to-1 for the episode and what happens at the beginning of the game. But I don't know. I just like watching the beginning of this season. I don't know. Something felt off. Like,
Yeah.
so much different than the first season. And I don't want to say based on the game, like the way the game is. It's just, I don't know if it's the acting or it's the writing.
Well, I think it's, even though it's like a 1-to-1 in the sense that the scenes are similar, like they have been shuffled around. So I think it's the pacing, and I think what's happening is they're really expanding the game and they're kind of in a weird place where, the second game was maybe actually like a season and a half worth of content, and
Right.
now they're trying to stretch it to 2. And I think the reason why The Last of Us 2 worked so well for me, and I know most people hate it, but, it worked well for me because, big thing happens relatively soon in the game. And then all of the extra like world building and exposition, they happen in flashbacks later. So the momentum is good where like big thing happens, that's the inciting incident, and now everything changes, and now the tension is there, and you're just like boom, 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 this needs to happen, that needs to happen. But then when there's quieter moments, you get those flashbacks. But
Yeah.
right now they're kind of changing it where everything happens chronologically. And I think that's going to make this season feel like it drags a little bit.
Yeah.
So
We'll see how it goes and if they cover the entire game in the season.
I don't think they are. I think they are making it 2.
It sounded like it was 2 seasons, and that this season 2 will only cover half the game. So I don't know what that means, where it stops, what's the cliffhanger, and will they change it up? Will they change the ending? Will they? I don't know, God.
Well, I think they were hinting at like they don't consider canon sacred, so they could change things, and
Like
some of the
Halo.
really big moments they could change. But I don't know how much they want to do that because other things have survived such backlash when they change to canon. I don't think they can change any of the major story beats because I think people will crucify them.
I don't want to say can't because if there's been so many rumors about making a Last of Us Part 3, and maybe they don't make a third game, but maybe they diverge here in the show and say our third game is really going to be a 4th season of the show.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say can't because nothing's ever impossible.
That's true.
Right?
I mean, I'll say I meant it in that way. Like they could do it, but if it causes a lot of backlash, is it worth it? Because I feel like nowadays, like communities that really love a franchise, they're so ardent that it has to follow,
Sure, the source material that
like if you don't follow the source material, like you better have done an amazing job.
I agree.
Like your 9 out of 10 has to be a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree, but the source material is so divisive to begin with. It's not.
That's true.
See, the difference with, because we have an example already, is Game of Thrones, where up to the point of the source material and the story in the book where it ended, people loved it.
Yeah.
But then when they continued on their own, everyone's like, no, this isn't good, and it like fell off a cliff, etc. But they don't know how the actual book is now going to
Yeah,
be. But
that's true.
it could be the opposite. It could be that they end up knocking out of the park season 3 and maybe a fourth season or fifth season, and they're like, wow, this.
Didn't IGN already review the whole second season? Did they give
Yeah,
like a
they did.
seven?
They gave it a 7 out of 10. So.
Which and I imagine like the first season, then they give it like a 9. So
Yeah, 9.
yeah. So I'm still excited for it, but I think seems like maybe the pacing
Yeah, you
is
can already
off,
tell.
and like
Yeah.
it's not gonna hook you as much.
Yeah. Also, I just have to say this again. No hate towards any of the actors, but I feel like who they cast for Ellie, just her now. Supposedly, there's this time skip, right? And it's like now, when she was in season 1, she definitely fit the bill of
Yeah.
a young Ellie. But now as she's older,
She doesn't.
She doesn't.
Because Ellie in the game actually felt like she was a lot more mature.
Yeah.
And like in this, she seems more immature.
Yeah, she's
and
more immature.
like stuck in a slightly older body, but that's still like
Yeah.
And
She's
you know
stuck
she's
in it.
21,
Yeah.
but it doesn't fit the same because when I was playing the second game, I was like, Ellie actually, I don't know how old she is in the game. I'm like, she actually seems like a college student.
Yeah,
like
she seems like
and that's how I felt like a freshman, sophomore, like that's the role.
Well,
and
she's
like,
immature.
And for her, in the TV show, like she feels like a high schooler.
Yeah, she definitely does, and we'll see how that plays throughout the rest of the season. But right now, I'm like, man, there's that right now. That was kind of hitting me a little harder because it's like a slightly grown up version of the season 1 character rather than a more mature version. And then she does. There's a scene in the first episode. And spoilers for people who haven't seen it yet. Is like she screams to Joel's brother saying, "Hey, I'm immune. I've been bit," and it just seemed so off. Like it was just like I don't know if that scene was in the game.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe she did, but it just had a different feel. Like it's hard to describe why. Maybe you have to think more about it.
Yeah.
But I think maybe it was the pacing, and in Last of Us 2, like some serious stuff happened pretty quick, and then like it seemed like she was already dealing with a lot of serious stuff. So she just seemed more serious. And in here, she's just. It seems like we're spending. I try not to spoil the game, but we're spending more time until that inciting incident happens, like in Wyoming. And so, because of that, she doesn't have as much stress on her. So she just seems kind of like, a little more childlike.
Yeah.
But I'm sure after the inciting incident happens, the big deal, then we're really going to see what that character looks like and if this was the right, actor selection.
Yeah, I agree. So give him the benefit of the doubt here, but overall, I wasn't super impressed with first episode.
Yeah,
so.
I feel like I'm giving it a lot of 8s everywhere, but that's an 8 for me.
That was like a 7 for me. I'll give that a 7.
Maybe I'm biased. Okay, probably was a 7. I think I'm just biased. I did get kind of bored.
Yeah,
it's probably a 7. And then I know you haven't seen this, but I have been watching Lazaurus, and I got some feelings about that one too. So, I think this might be an unpopular opinion. I think Cowboy Bebop is not as good as people think it is. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll preface that by saying I love Cowboy Bebop. When I'm writing, I listen to Cowboy Bebop lo-fi music all the time. The biggest poster I have in my gaming room next to Batman is Cowboy Bebop. So I love Cowboy Bebop. It's like a top 10, maybe top 5 anime for me. But I think it's been a long time and people don't remember what the structure of the show was like. And Cowboy Bebop was a huge phenomenon because it really brought the East and the West together, and it showed that like you could have a lot of style. And that show was just dripping with character and style, and it just felt cool and it felt badass, right? Without trying to be pretentious, you know? It was like equal parts like chill and cool and badass. And that's like such a like fine line to, balance. And I feel like the closest person I could compare it to is like Quentin Tarantino. Like when you watch a Quentin Tarantino movie, like you know what his style is. Like he kind of has that feel like, oh, this is chill. Like I'm gonna smoke a cigarette and like watch this movie. I don't smoke, but and I say that because I've tried to rewatch Cowboy Bebop and I find myself losing attention because it doesn't have this like really driving like plot, like premise that pushes you to watch the next episode and the next episode. It really just feels like a laid back vibe, right? And so because of that, like the pacing isn't always the best in Cowboy Bebop, and sometimes it just feels like the show is meandering around until the end, where like now you're like, oh, spoilers, but it's all about the girl and the tension with I forgot his name, Vicious, and It ends in a completely badass area. But for me, it kind of felt like the show was meandering a little too much until like episode 20. And that's why, even though I love Cowboy Bebop and I've really tried to rewatch it, it's hard for me to rewatch. And so I say that with Lazarus. And even if you think about Samurai Champloo, like, I love Samurai Champloo. But if you think back to your favorite moments of Samurai Champloo, like, it was a lot of the vibe of the show, right? And then near the end, I was like, oh my God, like, now that I've spent so much time with the characters and I care, like, everything is like going bananas and it really matters. And I just remember the ending so well. And I feel like that's his style. Like, he just makes you like get to know the characters, like chill with the characters for a while. And then when the time is up, like the story like hits a 10 out of 10 and then like shit happens, you know? So I say that because with Lazarus, like right now it's just kind of like really chill, laid back, like doesn't feel like a lot's happening. Some of the things that are happening are kind of like, what's the point, you know? Seems like an interesting world.
Yeah, isn't it like the introduction of some sort of like not a cure, but like
it's basically if like everyone took morphine and eventually morphine was going to kill everyone by becoming like a cancer.
So it's the promise is like, oh, this is supposed to fix a bunch of problems, but then they find out in reality it's actually going
to. Well, it was like an amazing drug that everyone took because it was just like a painkiller with no problem, and so the whole world took it. And then the guy was like, "Oh, by the way, everyone who took it actually you're going to die in 3 years." And
3 years
it's been
or 3 months.
3 years from taking your dose.
Oh, wow.
And he announces that like 2 years and like 11 months into the first person taking the dose. And so then he's like, "You have 30 days to find me, and I have the cure."
So did he do that on purpose?
He did it on purpose, but no one knows why he did that. Like, why would he create a drug, and that 3 years later he'll start killing everyone who took it, and so in a way he's going to eradicate all of humanity. But then why is he saying that if you find me then I have the cure? Why did he just not say anything?
Yeah. And so is he like a psychotic, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
but he's basically like a Nobel Peace Prize winning scientist, like the greatest mind. So it's very unusual. So that keeps me kind of fascinated.
Sure.
I think the main character,
some suspense.
The main character does remind me of Spike in a lot of ways. I like Spike better. But like this character to me is a little more like anti-authority, like a little, and he honestly, this guy can fight like crazy. Like the action is insane. The choreography, the parkour is insane. So that's like a strong, plus. I think where the show is suffering is the exposition is kind of clunky. Like some of the character conversations, it really feels like they're not people. Like they're just saying the lines the writers said that they have to say, So like it feels kind of artificial, like when some of the characters are talking to each other, and the pacing is really slowing down because it just you don't really know when it's going to pick up. I think it's a 7 right now for me.
How many episodes are on?
I think 2, but I'm going to watch it. I'm enjoying it. I think it's one of those shows that really picks up. And I feel like what also has happened is over time, we've actually wanted to get different things from television. Like, I don't know if you've tried to watch Sopranos recently, but Sopranos came out in a time where, you waited until Sunday and it was like your Sunday show and you're just kind of chilling. And a lot of times, like, the characters are kind of chilling and it doesn't feel like you have to watch the next episode.
Okay.
But like now we're in this like streaming mindset where it's all about like binge consuming. So almost every show will end with a cliffhanger, But like Sopranos didn't always end with a cliffhanger, and so I felt like Cowboy Bebop was the same way. It didn't always end with a cliffhanger because, see you, cowboy. Like we'll see you again next week, But nowadays, I feel like people don't want that. Like people want something that gets them talking. Like you get that dopamine rush. You can't wait until the next episode, and that's not it, So we'll see. We'll see how that develops. I really do hope it picks up because this was probably one of my most hyped anime in a long time. Because you got the director for John Wick, the action in those movies, and you get the guy who made Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo. Like, come on, that sounds amazing.
It always sounds subpar, so we'll see if it picks up. So, okay, yeah, another show that you've been watching that I just started with you. Not too long ago was The Pitt. This is an interesting show about an ER doctor in the life of a ER doctor. So Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you can talk about this a little because this is interesting because
IGN
it
gave it a
started.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, I didn't give it a 10 out of 10. The first episode was very gory. You seem to describe it as medically accurate.
Oh
I'm
yeah. I
kind of
mean, I have like
shocked.
friends who are ER doctors, and they're like, "Yeah, this is as authentic as television gets. Like when
Yeah,
it comes to ER shows." So
it's like, they showed in the first episode, like, who cares about spoilers because fuck the show. It doesn't matter. It's not narrative. Narratively, no one's going to care. But, like, they showed, like, what was it, that first year med student that just faints because she
yeah,
sees, what was it? Like, was the blood or
it's a
the,
degloving incident.
yeah,
That was
like,
so disgusting.
so disgusting. And it's just, it made me laugh because, like, I could see that, and I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
that would be
I
me.
think any healthcare worker who watches that show will say, "Wow, I can relate." Like, okay, that is the struggle of being a student.
Yeah.
That's the struggle of being a nurse or a doctor. Like, they did such a good job like capturing what it feels like to be in an ER. And I think that's why I really love this show because every time I've seen any sort of like medical show, it's always been about these like super gorgeous doctors and nurses, and all they do is have a
Yeah,
bunch of
yeah.
sex, and they focus on those aspects, and they don't really capture what it feels like to be in a hospital. And the thing is, I think any story can be interesting and well told if you capture the humanity in the character and you accurately capture their perspective,
Well, it's got to be
regardless of
relatable.
the career, and make it relatable, like whether you're in a law firm or you're an engineer or you're a doctor
Yeah.
or whatever, or a teacher. Like if you actually capture like what it is to be that person, the goods, the bads, the struggles, the tension, all the relationships, all of those things, it actually makes for a good story.
Yeah, and then don't get me wrong, the shows that you've probably seen where the doctors are getting all the sex, I'll be honest, they're high value targets. They probably do get a lot of sex, but that's not the part I want to see about their
Actually,
lives.
people aren't banging that much in
Really?
hospitals because most of them are
That's
depressed
fucked up,
or
bro.
miserable. I mean, there is
I,
banging, but
I look up to these people as role models, man. If they're not having sex, who is, man?
yeah,
I
right.
just
They're
don't
the
get
ones who are
it.
supposed to populate the world. But no,
um,
I actually stayed up until like 4 a.m. like binging the show. It's the
mhm.
first time I've done that in a long time, and I had a blast.
I could say this. I haven't seen Grey's Anatomy or any other medical shows other than General Hospital, but I wouldn't consider that a medical show. I'll say this: the first episode already caught my attention
Yeah.
really well. Like there was a hook there
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
I think they have a very good balance between humor, seriousness,
Yeah.
like tension, and also like teaching you a lesson.
Well, I'm also just very impressed by the actors. And I asked you this question: I'm like, do you think these are actual medical professionals, or just actors? You're like, actors, and I'm like, wow. Like for some of these people, especially to know the terminology and to sell it,
And
and
with the
then
confidence they have, and
yeah,
like
and
even like the little nuances of like how does the surgeon act in this role, like how
mm,
does the doctor act, how do they act together, like what is their body
yeah.
language like. They nail it so well.
Now, and I'm sure there's scenes where some of it's a little over dramatic, but
Oh yeah.
again, that's what makes
Yeah, I
the
mean they
show
definitely
fun.
give so much autonomy to the med students and the residents, and I
Yeah,
do feel like maybe a little
that's a
bit too
little
much
too much,
autonomy, and there probably should be more attendings.
right?
I've never seen an ER that only has one
One,
attending
yeah.
that's that busy, especially when you have multiple trauma
Or
codes. But
well,
I
also in the first episode, the lady that fakes coming in being sick, and she goes, "I'm really here for my grandson
yeah,
or son," and then the attending is like chasing the
oh yeah,
dude, and I'm like, sure, I
yeah,
could
I
see
don't
that
think
being
that
a
would
thing,
happen.
but I don't
Yeah, but
know,
the thing
like,
is, ERs have so much ridiculous stuff that happens around the world. Like you never know,
right?
and I'm sure
Never say never, yeah,
something like that has happened somewhere.
yeah, for
Because
sure,
just that's where you see the ridiculous stuff,
yeah.
right?
And
Um,
by the way, for the people that don't understand what I'm describing, the mother says, "Hey, I'm really here for my son because he's been writing."
Spoilers.
It doesn't matter. It's a fucking medical. No one gives a flying fuck. Um, it says, "Hey, my son has been writing some really dark things about hurting people, and I'm really here because I don't want to take a call the cops because I know my son's really actually a good person." And then the attendant gets worried, says, "Okay," and then he's like, "Okay, maybe I should pay attention to this kid." And first gives him a lecture and tries to get the kid to open up. The kid starts to realize what he's doing, and then the kid just starts to leave the hospital and then runs away. But the
And like
attendant starts chasing
chasing
him,
after her, yeah.
and it's like, is this
Yeah, I don't
realistic?
know if that would happen, but
Um,
and I don't want to ruin the show for anyone, but man, that show picks up like crazy. And
it's already been renewed for a second
yeah,
season.
and I already felt like I was in like a Mustang, like going like 70 miles per hour because I just felt the tension like constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, like I suddenly got in a Ferrari going like the Bugatti going like 300. Like you think it's like shit has hit the fan and it is as ridiculous as can be, and you don't know how these people are surviving. And then it just enters a whole new realm. And oh man, I really feel like the last four episodes of that show just elevate it. And that's why I think like 10 out of 10, like I'm kind of biased, medical, but I think it's deserved. Like that is one of the most fantastic shows I've watched in a while. And even if you don't think it's a 10, I think a solid 9. Like they just nailed it. And I say that because I know how you feel about, oh, it's a medical show, not a big deal. But I'm telling you, the show will surprise you. I think it's one of the standout shows of this year, and I'm pretty sure it's probably going to win some Emmys. Like, this is a huge hit for HBO Max.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's interesting. I'll watch it for sure now.
And
It's
I
on my
wonder if it's
radar.
going to end up being a more watched than Last of Us. Who knows? Because right now, I think it's number one.
I think from a brand recognition standpoint, I think it won't. Last of Us is just like millions of
Huge.
millions of people play the game. Hard to say, but I could be wrong. Right? You never know.
People love Grey's Anatomy.
That's true.
I
But
never have understood it, but
that show also went on for a long time,
Oh, yeah.
and we don't know if this will be that type of show. That'd be hard to. It's like Suits, where first two seasons were great, but they extended it so long that
Yeah.
it fell off a cliff too, quality wise,
Agreed.
right? No,
so I'm curious how that'll kind of turn out. I think that pretty much covers most of the things
Yeah.
we've been watching.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk about real quick is Goosebumps. I didn't realize that Goosebumps kind of came back in 2023 and 2025, basically this year, and this like anthology series essentially. So they're not like it's not like season 1, season 2. It's just they both tell a different story, and I kind of like it because it's like a very gritty take on Goosebumps, like teenagers, adults.
I wouldn't expect that from Disney.
Yeah, and I was like kind of shocked, and like I'm so used to the old school Goosebumps series as a kid that were purely
Wait, they had a TV show? I never knew that.
Yeah, so
I only read the books.
The shows were based off the books, and it felt very cheesy because they were emulating one for one the books, and it was just like kids, right? And I actually rewatched the old show a couple years ago during Halloween, and I'm like, wow, okay, this is a very cringe-worthy show, but there's like nostalgia there. This was like, wow, they actually tried. There's a story here. There's like, hey, there's an overarching arc, so it's not like every episode is about a different book. It's like a completely new take, and they go, hey, it starts like, here's a mystery, here's something that's going on in a specific town, and what is it really, like, what's going on? So I like that they're doing this for Goosebumps, because this was the way to redefine that series. Like, they tried making movies out of it, and the one with Jack Black was like not bad, but they could do so much more with that IP, and like, this is the right way. So now apparently the series in 2023 that came out got really good reviews, and the one that came out this year isn't as highly rated, but I like the show. It has David, I don't know how to say his last name, Schwimmer from Friends. He's the main.
Does he scream pivot at times?
No, he doesn't. But but when he talks exactly as he does. Like,
it's so weird.
It's so weird and annoying, but it's like, okay, he's still a good actor though. He still has it. Like, it's like this role that they put him in plays perfectly for what he's capable of doing range wise.
I feel like you're hitting me with the nostalgia hard. Do you remember those? I'm pretty sure it was Goosebumps. Those choose your own fear or choose your own death. Yeah. Man, that was amazing. Like, I don't think any other book has done anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's so fascinating.
It really is. That's why I'm saying, like, they could. Again, it took this many years to finally come up with an original Goosebumps story, and I'm like, wow. Like,
I feel like the tone of the Goosebumps books were so good because they weren't like truly horrifying.
Yeah,
they were just like scary enough that like they would like kind of give you
the chills,
kind of a shock or a chill. But then like when you're a kid, you're like, yeah, I'm reading Goosebumps.
Yeah, and it was a cool thing to be reading it while in school,
and it was fascinating. And man, like that was so popular when it wrote up.
And then there was the competing series, American Chillers and Michigan Chillers.
Michigan Chillers was so good.
Yeah, and like, get it, chills gives me the chills. Yeah. So again, I think I like what I'm seeing with what they're doing. I don't know if there's going to be another one after this because this didn't review as well.
I feel like Disney is really just trying to get big hits, you know, and they feel like they're kind of scrambling. They're pouring money into all these things, you know. And I feel like if it doesn't make big money, then they're going to scrap it. And then they're just going to make another Star Wars show. Yeah,
and that's disappointing in and of itself. But what I like about this anthology series from, again, 2025 is that the kids that they got to portray, like, what's going on in the town that they're in, they do a very good job of acting as like high school kids, like just enough that it's not annoying, but like a typical high schooler will complain about some really dumb stuff. And then there's some good jump scares like in the show. Again, it even got me to the point where I'm like, I'm not gonna get scared of this. It's Goosebumps, and I was like, wow. Like there was a couple of times where like, all right,
Bro, you know me, man. I always scream whenever there's a jump scare. I'm the worst, bro.
but it feels like here's what how I'll compare this. It kind of feels like Stranger Things.
Oh, okay.
So the production is actually really good.
I wonder if that's what Disney was trying to do. Like they were trying to make their own Stranger
Yeah,
Things.
like that's how it. That
Oh, that
absolutely
makes total sense.
Yeah. So I again I the season from 2023, I'm gonna watch it in reverse order, but that one was highly rated.
Wait, why reverse order?
I just didn't know there was one that came out in 2023. So I started watching the 2025
Oh,
one,
okay, I get what you're saying.
and then I saw suggested for it, and it was like, oh, there's one
Oh,
from
I
2 years
didn't
ago.
realize there was 2 seasons.
Yeah. So I'm gonna watch that afterwards, but that one was highly rated. That was like, wow, like that was really.
Yeah, I guess you could do that, like if they don't, feed into each other.
Yeah, they don't. So yeah, just wanted to talk about that. So for anyone that doesn't know, Goosebumps is back. Go watch it.
Okay, so I guess we can move on to big news pieces. So, Arjun, what is more fascinating for you to talk about? Oblivion remake or Marathon? Which one do you want to go for first?
Both of them are garbage. No, I'm just kidding. Let's talk about Oblivion Remake first, really quickly, just to get us out of the way. So, there's been a lot of rumors in the last several months that Oblivion was getting remade or remastered. We still don't know what the scope of it really is. And essentially, rumors are right now that it's going to be shadow dropped in about a week or so next week. And there's already been some leaks, and apparently, Virtuos, the studio that's remaking Metal Gear Solid 3, which is now called Delta, is remaking this. And based on some of the leaked images from their official site, wow, this looks freaking
Yeah.
good.
This is such a ridiculous story. Like, it almost feels like a fake story,
Yeah.
right? But, okay, if this is the same team that's making Metal Gear Solid 3, and how big did they hype up Metal Gear Solid 3? Why is nobody hyping up Oblivion Remake? Why would you shadow drop something that's as big as Oblivion Remake when Metal Gear Solid 3 has been getting so much
marketing,
attention?
Yeah.
And I would argue, like, Oblivion is probably a bigger game than Metal Gear Solid 3. I think Metal Gear Solid 3 is more loved, but Oblivion, so many people played that, right? Because it was on so many different consoles.
And we haven't had.
And I don't think Metal Gear Solid 3 was on the Xbox. So
maybe if it did, it came out super late, well after the fact. But.
So this is a massive game, and especially since people have been playing, Skyrim to death.
We haven't had an Elder Scrolls game since.
Elder Scrolls 6 is not going to come out for a while. Yeah. Avowed and all the other games that are supposed to hit that niche have not hit that niche. Like, this is the game, man.
And I wonder if they downplayed it and wanted to do a shout out, because when you look at Hi-Fi Rush, it's like, hey, we want to underhype it and over deliver.
Yeah.
Right? So that way, if people think it's good, they're like, wow, like
then the news will, I wonder if there's like they want to catch that like Helldivers 2,
and it just spreads quickly.
It just spreads like wildfire. Everyone goes crazy. Like, oh, can you believe Oblivion came out?
Yeah.
No one can review it in time because it just dropped. So everyone was like, I need to play Oblivion again.
Yeah. That's exactly what I think they're aiming for here. And I'm sure the budget for this was pretty small, but looking at some of these like images,
the images blew my mind. So I was like, oh my, okay, maybe I'm being hyperbolic because I love friggin' Oblivion, but that looked much better than I expected.
Yeah, so I'll say this. Obviously, Virtuos, I don't know how big they are, but to have 2 games being made in parallel, and both aren't released yet. So let's assume this comes out next week. We'll be able to judge based on quality of that release, potentially how Metal Gear is going to be. But if, let's say they knock both games out of the park, first I'm going to have to give credit to that studio, who's never really done a whole lot prior to this. There's been, I think, a couple things, but if they can do these 2, it's like, imagine what other games they can remake in a modern touch-up, especially in Unreal Engine 5.
But, I'm just really, really confused at the release date. Like, if Outer Worlds 2 is now the big thing that they're showing,
which it is,
and Fable got pushed back, why would you shadow drop it in April when your Xbox gamers have Avowed still to catch up on, South of Midnight, they have freaking Clair Obscur, then they have Doom right around the corner, and then in June they have Tony Hawk? Like, bro, that's so... and Power Boy. So many games.
I would have shadow dropped this in June. Like, on the Xbox Showcase, and one more thing, it should be the last game, and it's out today, June 7th.
Oh, yeah. That would be insane.
I don't understand
that would be like the thing to drop in June, you know? And if GTA 6 was going to come out in June, we would have known by now.
Yeah.
And so you would be safe, in June. And then it seems like, you have Outer Worlds and Ninja Gaiden 4, coming out later. I think they already said, well, I don't know if they gave a season for Ninja Gaiden 4. So I guess
I don't know if they said end of
but I thought it was
2025
going to be later, unless
or
they're going to drop
fall.
that in June or July. But this just seems like the perfect thing. Like you get through the high of Developer Direct, you finished all those games, you're waiting for Ninja Gaiden 4 to be announced, and all of a sudden June hits, you got Oblivion.
Yeah.
That just
So,
seemed like the perfect slam dunk thing.
well, just to read off a couple of things that I'm reading, again, rumors, guys, so take this with a grain of salt, but based on other credible sources and leaks prior, apparently this is the scope of the potential changes for this remaster. So, again, call it remaster, remake, I don't know what the fuck, it doesn't matter, but the HUD is meant to be easier to understand for new players, so there's going to be changes to the HUD. Stamina is meant to be less frustrating for players to be knocked down less when it's depleted, so changes to the stamina, the way it works. Hit reactions, it's meant to be improve combat on both the player and the enemy side, so it changes on how you're actually hitting and hit detection. Blocking, it's meant to be inspired by Souls-like games, so meaning they've changed the way blocking is in the game. Sneaking is meant to have more sneak icons highlighted, and archery is meant to make it more modern for third and first person play. So how can we even call this a remaster when you have this many
It's
changes?
massive. Like this feels like a remake. Like the graphics already look super updated. They're
Yeah,
adding all these changes. Like this looks like a remake. This looks like a freaking slam dunk, and
yeah.
I don't get it, but
And
whatever.
maybe that's why they're marketing Metal Gear Solid, because that's truly like, hey, we've changed it so much from the source material because now it's third person behind the back, whereas this is still virtually the same, and we're considering the changes we have much smaller in
Yeah,
comparison to
maybe it
Metal
didn't
Gear.
actually take that much work to do all that,
Yeah.
but I thought it would. I don't know. Did you ever play Oblivion?
No, I actually haven't.
So Oblivion, oh god, how old was I? That came out 2006, so
Wow.
I was definitely in high school. I think that was one of the first games I played on the 360, and that was probably like my more hardcore game, like
Okay.
more hardcore RPG. Because like before that, I played like Jade Empire. I don't think Mass Effect was out by the time Oblivion came out, so that was like the
That's why it was like
first.
2007, right?
Yeah, I think it was the year after. So like that was for me like the first one I really got to like soak into, and it was tough for me because I wasn't really into that. But
Yeah.
man, it was just such a badass concept. Like, oh, the gates of hell, you're going into hell and killing demons, and oh, it
Oblivion.
was so sick. And I can't even imagine. Like, I'm kind of freaked out to think about what that realm, like hell would look like,
Yeah.
and what all the demons and stuff would look like. And man, I'm super excited for Oblivion. Like, I my mind is telling me like, no, Microsoft and Bethesda need to hype this up. They need to really make sure everyone knows it's coming out. They should release it in June or July. But like, my heart is saying, bro, this needs to come out tomorrow, bro. I think if Oblivion came out, I would probably drop everything and start playing it.
Damn.
I'm
I feel like, so another game that was rumored to be being remastered for a while, for a couple years, by especially Mr. Matty Plays, was Fallout 3, I
Yeah,
think. And so honestly, Virtuos, and let's say they knocked it apart. Man, if Virtuos
yeah.
did that
Oh,
too, it would look amazing.
Fallout 3 is totally coming, bro. Like,
Yeah.
I can totally see Fallout 3 coming for season 2 or season 3 of the TV show.
But imagine they get that Unreal 5 touch up. Like,
Yeah.
dude, that, oh
Do we know if
man.
this is UE5 or
Yeah,
UE4?
looks like UE5.
Man. So
And again, Metal Gear is also UE5 as well.
yeah,
So
dude, and I did not expect that because didn't they make like the Outer Worlds like Spacer's Choice or whatever, and people were hating on the PC performance?
yeah.
Yeah,
But not Virtuos.
I
Right?
thought it was Virtuals. Yeah,
They're the ones that ported it? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and so that's why I think people were like, oh, are they going to do a good job? But maybe I'm judging too much based off the images. But honestly, the images look good. Like
Yeah,
it
no,
looked.
good. I mean, again, Metal Gear also looks good. So these are different in scope in terms of, if they did this, the PC version, that enhanced version, clearly they probably had a small budget and they didn't really
Yeah,
care. But also, we don't know how long this game has been in development. So
yeah, no idea.
if it was like I could see it being like a 3-year thing.
And I would be happy with this coming out because I think for me, I loved Avowed. Like I maybe I'll get flack for this. That was a 9 out of 10 game for me. I had a blast. But I think a lot of people were left disappointed because they really thought it was going to be like Oblivion, even though the developer said like 50 times it's not Oblivion. And so I think now these two will complement each other well. Like you can
Well,
have like
let's
actual,
let,
Skyrim Oblivion, and
yeah,
then you can
but
have
that's why. So if the game was smaller in scope, let's say again in terms of it being a remaster and what's coming to it, I think I can understand why they didn't want to announce this and have any pre-marketing or hype, because it would take over and just overshadow
Avowed, yeah.
Avowed.
If everyone knew Oblivion, I never thought about that, but if everyone knew Oblivion was coming out a few months after
Yeah,
Avowed, then people would not be hyped for Avowed.
and it makes sense because the most amount of sales you're going to get is within the first 2 to 3 months, right? For Avowed, especially it's not a game that's going to have long lags.
I wonder
I don't see that.
if Microsoft is so confident in Oblivion that they don't even think,
Yeah,
like, they think that if people know Oblivion is coming out, people will buy it. And honestly, if people were didn't they actually make a Skyrim for Alexa or something
yeah,
ridiculous like
yeah,
that?
yeah,
If
yeah.
Skyrim was on everything and people
Yeah.
ate it up, and even to this day people play it like crazy, maybe Microsoft's right. Maybe they don't have to say a word,
Yeah,
and
they
they just
don't.
have to say Oblivion is out, and then that's it.
Yeah, I
And then
think
they make
that's.
bajillions of dollars.
So I think, so I think right now the rumor is it's coming out on PC, Xbox Series, and PlayStation 5. So again, a lot of people will get it. But I also think it'd be cool if later on that they announce they're porting this over to the Switch
Oh,
too.
this could totally go to Switch too. That
Yeah,
would be dope.
I think this would perform well because again, like here's the thing that I'm shocked about. You take a game like Metal Gear and Oblivion, which were very old, and the fact that 2006 and whenever Metal Gear came out, and say, hey, I can port it over into Unreal and just pretty it up. Like Nintendo did that. They tried to do that from a Metroid Prime, but it doesn't look like to the extent of what we're doing with Unreal Engine.
And I think this is going to be a really good test, because everyone kind of like hates on Unreal because they say, well, every game on Unreal has an Unreal look and it's going to feel like a certain way. But there have been a good amount of games that have come out on Unreal that have been like fairly unique.
Yeah.
Like even Hi-Fi Rush. It
Even
doesn't
Hi-Fi,
feel like
yeah.
your normal Unreal game. I'm pretty sure that was Unreal.
Yeah, and Dragon Ball Z Sparkings, there's Unreal 5.
And so if this releases and you're able to get all of the Bethesda things where every item is saved in the game and you can just do some ridiculous stuff and it works in Unreal, that's going to be a huge benefit for Unreal. Like people will start to realize, man, this is really flexible. And I know I've been worried about, is Halo physics going to feel the same when they're on Unreal? But if they can make it work for Bethesda, then maybe Unreal is actually more flexible than we think. And a lot of developers just use more of the cookie cutter environments and the cookie cutter like landscapes because they're just low hanging fruit.
Yeah, it's low hanging fruit. So again, I'm still mind blown because again, taking two old ass games and being able to just say, boom, here we go. And it still play with the old code. So it's not like, hey, we're changing up everything. Yeah. It literally will play very similar to the old game. It's just you can make tweaks on top of it. And it's like, wow, changes the entire experience.
I bet you. Maybe I shouldn't bet because we have witnesses. But I'm pretty sure they're going to announce like a Oblivion conference or something, like a Bethesda show, and then they'll like show it off for like 30 minutes.
Yeah, if they did a small like state of play esque
they're gonna do like
15-minute thing,
something like that.
That'd be cool. But God, now is this year like a anniversary for the game?
I don't think so. I think it came out in 2020. I thought it came out in 2006.
Okay, so
because I thought this was like a within first year launch of 360. 360 came out in 2005, or 2006.
Yeah,
so
2005.
We're approaching the 20 year, but I want to say it's 19 years. So let me see. What do you think?
26 probably.
Why you think they're trying to do? It's 2005. I'm wrong.
So technically, it is the 20th anniversary.
Oh no! It was originally scheduled for November 2005, and then it was delayed to March 2006. I knew it because I remember when I was going to buy a 360, that was one of the main games that hooked me. I was like, I gotta get this, and then I had to wait, and I had to play a bunch of Ghost Recon in the first few months. Do you think they'll
have the original cover art for the new?
I think that it's that guy standing with like the fire behind him.
Oh yeah,
I think that's going to be the cover art.
That looks.
That looks sick. So that's dope. Anything else about Oblivion, or you want to talk about Marathon?
Talk about Marathon now. So Marathon, which is a extraction shooter game that was announced by Bungie, officially showed off. It was announced the year prior by Sony, but it's a premium title. We don't know how much it's going to cost. 3 maps at launch. I think
they're saying $40.
There's no. So Bungie.
Or is that just what people are thinking?
Yeah, that's what Bungie said yesterday or the day prior. We will announce pricing during the summer.
Wow.
So I don't know if there's going to be a showcase, but they said during summer. The game comes out, I think, in the fall, September. 3 maps at launch. There's going to be a paid battle pass as well. I don't know what people think of this because depending on how, again, dense the game is, like, should this be free or not? I think that's a question on a lot of people's mind.
So I think like a game like this might make sense free to play, but honestly, I'm so over free to play games. Like I would rather pay $30 to $40 up front and get more content rather than the drip feed of live service.
Oh
Like
yeah. So
look at
to
Helldivers. Like Helldivers 2, I feel like they did it well. It released a $40 game, has a decent amount of content, and it's also live service, right?
yeah. So that's to, again to explain to people. This is a PvPvE game, the genre that exists, and it's an extraction shooter. So I think what you described to me earlier is like, hey, you play this game, the whole goal is to extract loot or money or etc. But like, there's elements in the game where like if you have gear, you may potentially lose it if you die permanently. So I don't know if this game will speak to a lot. It could be more for a hardcore
Yeah, it
audience.
feels really hardcore. Now I've never played Escape from Tarkov, but I think
That's the
yeah,
most popular one.
and
Yeah,
I've been
or
like reading
Apex.
online, like some people are like, okay, if Escape for Tarkov is more like PUBG, is Marathon going to be like Fortnite, for
Yeah,
extraction? And the thing is, I think with battle royales, like you don't have to be that invested. Like honestly, you can kind of just hide on a map and do decent, right? But for extraction shooters, like you got to be good
you have to
at
be
what you
good.
do. I mean, you
It's
could
a
hide,
three-player team.
but I especially I think if you permanently lose loot if you die, then really I feel like it's going to be more hardcore audience.
Yeah, you have to. You're gonna be camping more. You're gonna be strategizing more. You're not gonna just go out in the open and die and then be like, oh great, I lost
Yeah.
everything. I'm not playing this again.
So similarly, I guess maybe this is what I'm saying for everything, but mixed feelings when I saw the announcement.
Yeah.
I think one of my first thoughts when I was seeing the trailer was, why is there no texture for anything? Right. And
Yeah,
I was
that's
telling you
odd.
about that. Like everything is a flat, shiny surface, and it almost makes it feel like it's an indie AA game. And you
Yeah,
look at Destiny, and even when they first showed off Destiny gameplay, like the robots, everything in texture to it. And I get the fact that this is the art style is trying to be like flashy, colorful, cyberpunk in a way. And I get that. But to me, that doesn't mean you just like don't have textures, because you can
yeah,
have like, very like flat lines and, smooth surfaces, but still have texture details to things,
yeah, yeah.
like
That's
why are the gun models just look like a bunch of blocks at
yeah. They're really
times?
blocks, you know. And this needs to be a big hit for Bungie. I mean, for people that don't know, they lost quite a few people in the last year. Sony laid off a lot after acquiring them, and they acquired them for a lot of money. I think 3.5 billion or $3 billion, and a lot of that money was used as a retention bonus to keep a lot of the talent. But Bungie basically needs to step up now in this aspect. Destiny obviously slowly has been having a declining user base or player base, and they just announced actually today Destiny's new expansion. I forgot what it's called, but
Yeah, I didn't realize that Destiny was going to keep going. I thought
they
Destiny was
did.
going to die.
No, they basically said now every year they're going to have two expansions. They're going to be smaller in scope, but it's still going to continue on. I don't know how many people truly are playing the game,
I feel
but
like as long as you have a couple of cool exotics and a raid every once in a while, like you
it fit the
can,
bill.
yeah, like if you now have like a nice raid every 2 years or 18 months, and you have like three nice exotics, like you might lose like 20 or 30% of your people,
Yeah,
but like the people who are into Destiny, like you're invested. Like think about the people who are still playing RuneScape. Like people who are invested in a game, like
but
if you're gonna leave Destiny behind, and what about all those hours you grinded, all those exotics you had?
yeah, I mean, what else is this? Like Destiny, what captured I think a lot of people's attention because it was popular at the time when it was released years ago, is that it did enough that said, "Hey, you need to play this game at the very beginning of its release," and then slowly you
Yeah,
lost a lot of its player count, right? But they were able to have very long legs. Like it lasted for so many years that
yeah. I doubted Destiny,
yeah,
and
and
man, it lasted.
it
And
spawned a sequel and multiple
oh
expansions.
yeah,
And it was popular enough that people were like, wow, like this was like we all played it,
oh yeah.
with a lot of our
And
friends.
And even though I've been kind of hard on Destiny at times, I think for me, I'm like the biggest Halo fan, and for me, those were big shoes to fill because I really wanted more like story based content, and Destiny didn't deliver for me in that way.
Yeah,
But Destiny is my second most played online game
right.
after Halo
Which
3
is which
and
is
Halo Infinite. So, well, I
yeah,
guess 3 then, but
which is
played the crap out of Destiny.
yeah, which is funny because you can see like watching these trailers for Marathon, the DNA of Halo and Destiny in the gameplay loop, right? the guns look very similar, the sniping, the shooting.
I mean, in a way, it's kind of
Um,
ironic because, like, couldn't you kind of make the argument that it's just Halo in different like art
yeah,
styles,
that's basically
basically?
what it looks like. Like it's almost like, hey, someone took Forge again and said,
Yeah.
let's make another mode,
I'm sure you
and
could just make a Forge extraction mode.
yeah,
You know, it's not gonna be the same, obviously, because they have like a whole inventory system and stuff. But
true,
I think what we're trying to say is like that core DNA of like how the guns feel, how they
yeah,
shoot, how the movement feels, like how like you have like some sort of triangle of melee and
yeah.
shooting and powers or grenades. Like that's always been like where Bungie has excelled. And from all the coverage we're seeing, it looks like
Ex-
again they hit it
yeah,
out of the
like I
park
could
with
see
the
like
gameplay.
the melee in their game looked like the Titan Punch, and then the jumping looked the same as like when you activated a special in Destiny. So if anything captures anyone for this game, it's going to be because the gameplay is similar. Now, will the actual core loop be good enough to retain people? I don't know. Hard
Yeah,
to say.
I, when I'm not really into extraction shooters. I'm gonna give this game a try.
Try
Especially, I'm gonna
it.
try the alpha, and I'm gonna see if I can get into it. Um, to me, it still seems a little too grindy for me.
Yeah,
Because especially now, like if I lose my gear, and then
yeah,
I
I'm
have to get
not.
some like pity packages to do decent.
Yeah,
Like I feel like this would be a game that it would be hard to leave and come back.
yeah,
Because if you lose your skill and then you come and now how are you going to warm up?
yeah. You can't just jump in and
you're going to come in with worse gear to warm up for a few rounds,
yeah,
and then they're going to be throwaway gear because you'll probably
and
lose. So, to me, it feels like this is a game you got to be dialed in and you have to be invested. And, Tarkov, like the people who love Tarkov, they're invested,
yeah. But you're asking me to pay a premium price, and if I, like I said, if I lose everything, you want me to come back? Like
Yeah.
to me, this makes more sense to be a free to play model. Like
Yeah.
I don't understand why
Yeah.
you charge for this.
Well, I think a lot of businesses are realizing that it's really hard to sustain a free to play model because you need to have such massive
Mm.
scope and you just need to have so many players. It's just really hard. So honestly I feel like most shooters that are going to come out now they're going to adopt the Helldivers 2 format. Like
Yeah,
instead of 60 to 70, because we would expect like a full campaign and a full multiplayer, like pay $30 to $40. You get a good mode, and then if you want battle passes later, you get them.
but
And I
like
feel like that way you get like money up front and then money later with battle passes. And I really think this is what most game
yeah, I think
studios will
every
do.
game series will do this. Now, there's gonna be a lot of eyes on this because the game just prior to this that might have been somewhat similar in nature was Concord, released by
Oh yeah.
Sony, and that failed tremendously to the point where they shut the game down a week or two after launch, and they did close the studio. So
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's Concord 2." I think Bungie knows the basic fundamentals of what they're doing so well that it's not going to be a Concord. That's how I feel. I think the gameplay is going to be really good, and so that's going to be and it's going to have a certain amount of polish, so they'll deliver on that. And honestly, how could Concord compete with Overwatch and Marvel rivals? Like there's no way. But in the space of extraction, like Bungie is kind of the first one there, right?
mm,
Because there's Tarkov, but then that's it. And Tarkov is just, I mean, it's mostly like hardcore gamers who know about that. Like I think if I, got a couple of casual gamers who play mostly free to play games, like they probably have not heard of Tarkov,
yeah,
and they probably don't really know what it is. Um, so for that, I think for this game to be successful, I really think they're going to have to find a way to retain players well,
yeah,
and they're going to have a really nice roadmap, and it's going to have to be like a good balance of challenging enough, but not too challenging.
yeah,
And so we'll see. I this is my opinion. I could totally be wrong. Maybe I'm too much of a Bungie fanboy. I don't think this game will be as successful as Destiny or Halo,
yeah.
but I don't think it's going to flop. I think it will be very successful, but it will not hit the heights of Destiny because, man, Destiny really was successful.
Yeah, I'll say this, like I'm not selling or buying on this game. So like to me if this game fails, I don't really care. Like I mean, Sony made their decision to buy them up and gobble them up at a time where everyone was buying every studio, or not every studio, but where a lot of studios are being acquired. And they thought this was going to give them a competitive advantage. And we can see that because they initially wanted to release 12 live service games, and that's no longer the case. But now it is what it is, and they just have to stick with it. They want to take a loss on this. It was a lot of money. And so they want to get the most out of
And
it.
the thing is, like, especially with Sony, I feel like they're a lot more on making the money work. You
Yeah.
know, I think Microsoft, they're like, oh, we lost how many billion dollars on Zune? It's okay. We got deep pockets. But for Sony, like they're way more calculated. They don't like to lose money.
They're very business oriented. They're going to streamline and make that studio very lean, and they're going to say we're going to pump out something out of you, and we're going to try to get as much as we can. And again, I don't really give a shit. Again, I'm not buying or selling. It's the real question for Sony is: was the juice worth the squeeze? Was it really worth releasing something like Marathon? And if it flops,
I think
brand reputation and like damage to that. I don't know.
I think for Sony, you know, their valuation on how important Bungie would be to their brand was predicated on the fact that not only would Bungie make them money, but Bungie would help their studios diversify into live service and multiplayer, and then they would make money from there. So I think that initial calculation ended up failing for them,
right.
And I think that's going to really bite them in the butt, right? I think Marathon will be successful. There's going to be obviously that like backlash we see anytime anything gets released, and people will find reasons to hate it, and then compare to Concord and talk about how it's not Destiny. But I think overall it's going to be a successful game. Maybe it'll be as big as Helldivers 2.
Maybe.
And I don't know the numbers offhand, but to me, Destiny 2 is a much bigger game than Helldivers.
Yeah.
Right? And I think like you can get like Helldivers success, maybe a little bigger than that, but I don't know if you're going to get Destiny success again.
Yeah.
Because with Destiny, you know, you still had a story mode. You still had Crucible. You still had PvE, which came later, but still you had like a lot more variety.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to this is just one mode.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like I just don't know, and I'm not even going to try to guess. You know, because different games hit
differently. All right, we gotta do one guess. One guess. All right. What do you think is going to be the peak Steam concurrent count when it comes out?
What, first week, first day?
When it maxes out, whether that's the first day or within the first week.
I guess the question is, do we know if it's releasing on Steam?
I assume so. Why would they not release on Steam? Where else are they release on PC? Because they don't have like a BattleNet.
No, I was saying, would they delay the was it going to be PlayStation first?
Oh yeah, I think it's same day.
Okay, so I'll say concurrent max. I don't want to say ever. I'll just say for the first year, I'm gonna go max concurrent. I'm gonna say 125,000.
Oh my god, bro! I'm going 850.
What the fuck?
I'm going 850, bro.
No way.
Yeah, dude, I think so.
Pull up the most concurrent for Tarkov. The fuck? What are you on track?
All right, highest concurrent for Tarkov.
200,000. And you think it's gonna hit 800,000?
I think so.
Are you? What are you smoking?
Let's see. Highest concurrent for Destiny. Okay, all right, maybe a little too high. Highest concurrent.
You think that 306, and you think it's gonna hit 800,000 with less content?
Fine,
a battle pass.
I'll revise the estimate.
No, you can't revise. We already bet on it.
I never said the word bet.
You said let's make a bet.
I said prediction.
Okay, you made your prediction. That's recorded live.
Maybe 450. 450.
No, we're not. 850 is more.
Right, how about this though? I think the concurrent on Marathon will be higher than the concurrent. The highest concurrent on Marathon will be more than the highest concurrent on Destiny.
That's such a cop out.
So it's definitely going to be over 300. Okay, definitely going to be over 300. But I don't think it's going to have the same retention. But I think there's going to be enough attention on it when it first comes out that the numbers will be crazy.
I don't think it will. This isn't Halo, a pre-established IP where when they first went free to play for Halo Infinite, we had a couple million people try it out. It's not free. This game is not free.
Steam Concur was still only 200.
Look, 200. I agree, but again, overall with both platforms, like to me, just because that game is synonymous with Xbox. This game specifically is not free to play. Less content up front, and people were excited that when Halo Infinite released with free to play, that they still had the story to then buy them over. This has none of that shit going for them.
You are arguing with logic, and I cannot prove you wrong because logically your argument makes sense. But all I can say to that is, and not hating on the game because I think it was a huge success and it deserved it. Pal World. Okay, how many people play
because that literally was a Pokemon ripoff.
No, because
that was a Pokemon ripoff.
We're in an era where things go viral, and I'm telling you, I think Marathon's going to go viral, and I think it's going to get over 300.
I don't think so. Look, I'm not saying it's going to do bad, but 125K. Let's say if that's like their peak concurrent, that's great.
Okay, maybe 850 was too much, but give me 400. Give me 400. It's going to be Destiny.
I'm sticking to 850. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I'll remember this. I'm what the
But what
fuck?
happens if it ends up being 1 million?
I'll say I'm wrong because, like I said, I'm not buying or selling. I'm just saying I don't believe it's gonna
Okay,
get that
okay.
high.
But I guess those are my thoughts on Marathon. I'm definitely gonna check it out when the alpha or the beta comes out because,
I'll try to do it as
and I
well.
guess maybe I am gassing up the game too much because I don't actually know if I'm gonna buy it. And if I'm
Yeah.
a massive Halo fan and I'm a massive Destiny fan, and I don't know if I'm gonna buy Marathon, I guess
Well,
a
think
lot
about
of people
this.
must be feeling the way I'm feeling.
Let's say it is competitive, right? It's not as fun as Destiny's multiplayer is. And by fun, I mean it's not as casual. If that's the case and you play by yourself with other random people, you're gonna have to really communicate with those people. And if those people don't communicate with you online, the game's not gonna
It's
be
gonna
fun.
suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially when you're older, like it's hard to find like two other people who are going to
Yeah.
consistently play with you and be dedicated to the game. And I just don't want this to be a game where I spend $40 and then a few weeks later, I never play.
And that happened
You
with
know?
Helldivers.
If this was a Game Pass game, oh yeah, exactly. That's what happened with me to Helldivers. I had a lot of fun for 2 weeks, and afterwards, I never touched it again, and I felt stupid for buying it.
Yeah.
So I guess good point there. So I guess we'll see. I think the part of me that thinks this is going to go viral outweighs the logical part of me that thinks if I'm not going to pump, I might not buy it. Maybe a lot of other people are feeling that way.
Yeah.
So that's Marathon. I guess other big news to talk about. We haven't seen it yet, but man, what do you think about how much money the Minecraft movie has made?
Oh yeah, that is honestly shocking.
Because I think it's already at over $500 million. It's already be 500 million, which is crazy to think because that means in the first weekend it hit like 314 million global, and the second weekend it must have made at least close to 200 million.
Yeah,
which is not a huge drop off.
Yeah, it's not. It has some pretty good legs, and it's only been like a week or two. Like they did it smart by casting both Jason Momoa as well as Jack Black, two really well liked actors. And then on top of that, it seems like the target audience is very young. Surprisingly, well, not young, but like between 18 and 25, which is
I
shocking.
think it's so funny because it has like bad reviews, right? Yeah. People feel like it failed, but and apparently I was like reading up on this. Like Jack Black has been playing a ton of Minecraft. Like that's like his thing now. He just really understands Minecraft. Maybe actually this is a scenario where like the people who made the movie actually understand their audience.
Maybe.
And we don't understand the audience. So that's why like a lot of people in our generation are like, why in the world are people going crazy over Chicken Jockey?
Yeah, like the game is very meme-ish, right? So people do all sorts of funny things. I've seen people do the most wonkiest things that it just in the game. So the way I see this too is like, again, with the different young audience showing up, and I've seen a bunch of TikTok videos now, people just going ape shit while watching the movie, right? They're making a mess. They're like, oh my God, Chicken Jockey, and this is crazy. And then again, it spreads, right? So if they know that a bunch of high school students are watching the movie, it's like, oh, I got to watch it now too.
It's like an event.
It's an event. So
I guess like I have a couple things that like I think are like fascinating about the story, and that's why I want to talk about it. I think a lot of analysts have been talking about, okay, like Gen Z and Gen X. What's it? Gen Alpha.
Gen Alpha.
That's the next one. Like, they're not gonna.
They're the relay group on Minecraft.
Yeah, they're not the ones. They're not gonna go to movies. They're the streaming generation. They have depression, anxiety. They're not that social. This and that. But if you speak to them, they show up. Like you can still have massive movie success, video game success, all of those things with that generation. It's not like they hate movies, you know? So I think that's a big point, and I think Hollywood is really going to learn from Minecraft because I think Hollywood is really afraid that, like, man, we're going to milk millennials. We're going to really maybe even milk, like, older Gen Z because we're not going to be able to milk Gen Alpha the same way. And, hey, I think Minecraft proves them wrong, right? And then I think there's a part of me, we're in our 30s, right? So there's a part of me that kind of looks down. It's like, okay, this is stupid. Like, why are you... Sorry about that. We got interrupted for a bit, but we're back on. So, finishing up, what I was trying to get to and build towards talking about Minecraft, I think the thing that really, gets me the most and, really makes me think about it. I feel like I'm finally that older guy, who, feels kind of, in a different generation. And when I look at the Minecraft movie, like a lot of it seems kind of silly, like not my thing. I think it's too casual. It's really not like my cup of tea at all. So part of me wants to be kind of like critical and be like, oh no, like we had great movies. Like we had Napoleon Dynamite. Napoleon Dynamite was so much funnier, right? And this is the same director. But at the same time, like I can only hate so much because if I was young and they made a Halo game which had a bunch of references, or they made a Call of Duty game that had a bunch of references, or they had like any any movie that came out with the games that we loved and had all those references, I would probably be acting a fool too. Like, can you imagine if they had like Grand Theft Auto 4, the movie, and they had a bunch of references to the game? We would probably do some dumb shit.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah, I might look at like, okay, it's a chicken jockey. Like, why are you freaking out? But for me, like, if all of a sudden, it was someone pulling out an energy sword, right, in the movie, right? Or like, remember the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, like that coffee, meme or whatever, let's have coffee. And then it was like the first sex scene or whatever in a video game. Like, if there was a reference like that came out in a movie when we were younger, like, yeah, I'd probably act a fool.
It's funny because I saw a TikTok video where someone actually brought a chicken to the movie. I was like, okay, this is getting out of
It's like a huge problem, because it's actually getting like kind of crazy and violent, and they're really trashing stuff. So I think that's kind of a shame, because I hope now people don't just expect that out of gamers, and like, oh, all gamers are going to act a fool if you make any sort of game movie. So like, this is you have to watch out for with Zelda, and this is what you have to watch out for with anything.
Hopefully we're not trying to generalize. It's just this specific game, when it came out, resonated with an audience of kids that now that they're grown up and more older, are acting in a way that maybe we as millennials would not have acted had we seen a movie that was nostalgic to us. But I don't know.
Do you think if we were in high school and like, Halo the movie came out?
I'm trying to think of a movie that came out. I feel like maybe the one movie I can think of, and it's not like it's not the same genre, but it was like episode 3 of Star Wars, and I feel like I was in 6th or 7th grade, and I feel like everyone's like, wow, this was
But the thing is, like, I can't think of an equivalent thing, for our generation, because there were still people older than us who watched Star Wars and enjoyed it. Like, they would shit on it and be like 4, 5, and 6 are better, right? But still, they would like appreciate it, and they could, experience the in jokes and all that stuff. But like the Minecraft movie just feels like a very unique thing, like that's not for us, it's specifically for them,
That's fair.
So I don't know. Are you gonna watch it?
Probably not. Depends. Maybe I might end up taking my niece and nephew to it. So it depends. If I watch it, it wouldn't be because I want to see it. It's because I want them to see it.
I mean, I do actually want to watch it. I just don't think I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, I definitely don't. I don't care.
I think if it comes out like on streaming, I'll check it out because
it will.
I kind of do want to get into Minecraft. Like, I played Legends, I played Dungeons. I just couldn't get into it. I think out of the 3, like, I never played base Minecraft, but that just never interested me.
And I just didn't
I think Dungeons was kind of interesting because it felt like Diablo, but I just, I couldn't get that into it. But I feel like Minecraft is such a huge pillar of gaming. I mean, it's like the second best selling game ever after Tetris.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just huge, right? So I want to like understand that more, right? But I just don't really like games where you have to put in the work to build.
Yeah, I don't
your
either.
own world. Like, I don't like building games. It's just not me.
I also like games where I can complete and there's no complete.
There's no end. Yeah. It's just imagination, right?
Yeah.
So, do you think this is going to be the most successful video game movie of all time? Do you think it's going to be what Mario's 1.4, 1.3, something like that?
1.3. I don't think this is going to surpass Mario. I think it'll get close. I think it'll be above a billion. But I just don't think it's going to surpass.
Man, maybe I'm just having too big predictions. I think it's going to be Mario. I think it's going to hit over 1.5.
I don't think so. You thought there was going to be 850K concurrent.
Hey, I haven't been proved wrong yet. I haven't been proved wrong yet.
Wild.
Palworld got 2 million, bro. Give me 850. But no, I mean, it's already has 500 million. I think it's already selling better than Mario in its second week out. I think this is gonna have long legs. I think it's really gonna sell like crazy, and people are just gonna be like, "What the hell?" They're not gonna understand.
Yeah, it's possible.
And Microsoft must be very happy right now because they got so much crap for their Halo TV show, and then Fallout, huge hit for them, right?
Yeah.
Now Minecraft, bad reviews, so what? They're making the money, So I think they're definitely very happy. So kudos, for all of them. I guess they found a niche that other people don't understand, but it's making them a ton of money.
Yeah, good for them. I mean, again, it's good to see these types of movies out there speaking to an audience, and it's good that we're getting some variety. Again, that them casting well-known actors,
Oh,
whatever, is
I think getting those actors really helped solidify
definitely.
the movie.
Especially seeing Jason Momoa in a
Oh,
pink jacket with long
he's been
hair.
doing a lot more comedy roles. I was like,
Yeah,
talking to the wife about it. I was like, I really like that about Jason Momoa. Like, he can be like a badass, and he can be like really scary. He can be really sexy. He can be really funny. He
yeah,
has that range, and I think it kind of goes into like a broader topic, like how do we define manliness, and like how is manliness portrayed in like American cinema? And I remember when me and you were watching Bloodhounds. Remember that Korean TV show?
yeah,
And I was like, man, I love this. Like, these guys are badass. They're so tough, right? But at the same time, they really respect their family. You can see them cry.
yeah,
You can see them feel broken up when they actually fail. Like, you never see that in American movies.
yeah,
Like, you always see the guy who never feels pain, never feels fear, never feels tears. Like, nothing can
yeah,
phase him. And he just is like almost a robot,
yeah, yeah.
And like, that's a man. And so, like, I like the fact that, like, now some of that's changing where you can have more range. Like, Jason Momoa can be like, bro, like, I can be that fucking sexy Aquaman and everyone wants to bang me. I can also be an action hero. I can be a goofball too.
That's so weird because that's what my wife's boyfriend said too.
Yeah. But anyways, anything else about Minecraft?
No.
All right, we'll see.
Yeah.
After it hits 1.5, you'll see.
We'll see. So yeah, I guess there's one other topic that I wanted to talk about. Just some more Switch 2 news because there's been a lot going on since the announcement so quickly. So for those that don't know, in the US at least, and now this includes Canada too, but pre-orders have been delayed. So initially they were set to open up pre-orders at all retail stores that were going to get shipments on April 9th. But due to the whole tariff situation and tariffs being levied on a bunch of different countries, especially Vietnam and China, those that Nintendo's manufacturing the actual consoles in, which was like I think Vietnam was levied with a 46% tariff.
Something crazy.
Something crazy. They're like, we have to reevaluate our situation, so we don't know if there's going to be a price increase or not. And then all of a sudden last week, so on top of delaying the pre-orders and saying, hey, we're just delaying pre-orders, but we're not changing the release date. Then all of a sudden Trump came out, or either the White House came out saying we're giving exceptions to certain electronics,
but not video game systems.
But not video games. And then over the weekend, they said we never said that. We're just putting it in a different classification, but they'll still be at minimum at 20% tariff at a minimum. So right now it's so confusing. So I think
Nintendo must be very frustrated right now.
Yeah, I bet you in the war room they're just going apeshit because it's not like it's not gonna cause this to be a flop, but people are going to be pissed regardless.
I mean, people are still going to buy Switch 2 like crazy. I don't think it's going to be a Wii U. Like, I think a lot of people are like, well, if you look at the boom and bust cycle of Nintendo, we're bound for a fail. But no, I think there's enough strong games that are coming out. There's been a lot of like build up fervor around the Switch 2, and the Switch 1 is just not going to get the job done anymore because the graphics is too outdated. So Switch 2 is going to sell well, but absolutely, the price can impact the ceiling of how high it's going to go.
Exactly.
Like instead of like selling 140, it can sell 100.
Exactly.
And then I think Nintendo's looking at the numbers. They're like, well, would we rather take 100 million units sold at 500 a piece or 120 million units sold? And so they're looking into those calculations.
Price proposition of what they originally announced of 450. I actually thought that wasn't bad. Like I was hoping for 400, but. And they said that they didn't bake in tariffs for the initial price point. And I wouldn't say a lot of people, but there are people upset that it was announced for $450 and that Mario Kart is an $80 game.
Yeah.
And what Nintendo said is we're going with a variable pricing approach going forward, which I think is good. I'm happy that not every game is going to be $80. Some games might be 70, some games might be cheaper. And we don't know what the ceiling is. Maybe some games could be more than 80. We don't know. But I would have to assume right now the ceiling is 80 because if Mario Kart is 80, like that's their most popular title. And
I mean, I think it's unfortunate and I don't like it, but it's kind of the reality of what we live in. Like inflation has been it's been rampant. Crazy, and I hate to be that guy, but when you adjust things for inflation, like the consoles aren't that bad.
Yeah,
they're not that expensive.
And someone's already done the analysis. I've seen multiple articles on this, but most of the consoles, other Nintendo consoles adjusted for inflation now, were roughly the same price, if not slightly more, slightly less.
About the same thing.
So,
and I think what really stings for people is when they think, okay, 450 for the Switch 2 and then 500 for the Xbox. Yeah, so when you're looking at the Xbox being 500 and you're looking at the PS5 being 500, right? Then and you look at the Switch 2 being 450, then I think it stings a little bit more because I think in people's minds they're expecting more of a separation, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing, but how come no one is outraged and talking about how expensive the ROG Ally X is? You know,
Yeah.
look at these Windows handheld PCs. They're
Yeah.
crazy expensive.
And they don't even sell as well.
And they don't even sell as well. And yeah, okay, like you get more performance, but how much more performance are you truly getting when you're paying like double the price?
Especially when most games, when they launch, aren't even PC optimized.
Yeah. And so the thing, and I think for people who only have Nintendo consoles, right, 450 seems like a lot. For people who have PS5s and Xboxes, 450 seems like a lot because they're like, oh man, that's just $50 cheaper than what I have. But like, if you actually zoom out and look at the handheld space and you look at the competitors, like, what is the Steam Deck offering performance and battery wise for their price versus an Ally X? The Switch 2 at 450 is actually a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not upset with it, but I reside now in an audience where I make enough money that it doesn't bother me. So for those that are truly upset, if they don't make enough to justify the cost, maybe you should be upset with your employers potentially for not paying you.
Yeah, well, that's
it's a whole different
thing.
story.
I think my bigger problem with Nintendo is, okay, 450 is the starting price, right? But nothing ever goes on sale for Nintendo.
That's the problem.
You know, like
games retain their value.
PS5 and Series X come out, it's $500, a little bit too much for you. Okay, you can grind, you can save up. Maybe
sales,
when you have sales, you wait for that, you trade some stuff in, then it becomes more palatable, it becomes more affordable. But with Nintendo, it never goes on sale. So if you can't afford it $450 now you're going to have to afford it $450 later, and things are even more expensive. And your quality, and
as year goes on,
eggs are even more expensive. You know, so that's the thing that really sucks when you're a Nintendo fanboy.
Yeah, that's the other thing, man. Every game retains its value. The consoles never go down. They've never gotten really a price cut. The only thing that made it helpful was when Nintendo announced the Switch Lite, and then it was $100 cheaper.
And your trade-in is not going to go that far with the original Switch, or even the Switch OLED. So it is going to suck for those reasons.
I mean, it's funny because I've seen multiple sales, and I even got a second Series X because it was so cheap for like $300, but sometimes going for $325. I've seen a PS5 go as low as $360 on random sales, and these weren't official price cuts. There's just holiday sales in stores.
I mean, honestly, now, and I don't think this is going to help Microsoft that much. I don't think they're going to sell that much more, but man, the Series S looks like the greatest value proposition of all time.
Especially
300, and when it goes on sale, it's gone down to 200.
Yeah, and that will still probably outperform the Switch too, so in terms of like fidelity, right? So it's like
power-wise,
The funnier thing is Sony just announced this last week. They're now upping the price of the PlayStation 5 in Europe. So now they said, and this is what they said, their logic and reasoning was due to inflation and other surrounding factors. They're basically increasing the price in Europe to maintain the current price in the US. So they don't want to raise the price in the US because their largest audience is here. But now people in Europe are pissed because like, why do we have to pay more for them to get a console at the price they're still getting it at? So that's kind of crazy now.
Yeah. And I feel like Nintendo is looking at those numbers too, because the thing is, so much of that money is going to be pouring in from America. You know, they're probably okay with subsidizing that, you know, and losing some money out on that.
But isn't this crazy? Ever since I was a kid, I've never seen any of the OEMs say, "Oh, 3 to 5 years later, we're upping the price of your console." It was always a price cut, and as well as a refactor of the console. Here's a new edition of it. I'm like, dude, if I was in Europe, I'd be so pissed. I'd be like, this is insane.
I mean, this is the new world we live in because, I mean, prices have just went up so much. And the thing is, technology has advanced to such a point where even though we're like fabricating better chips, right, and we're getting better yields, we're at like 2, 3, 4, 6 nanometer. You know, like it's already so small and efficient. Even if you get a better way of, getting more yield on the chips so you don't waste as much silicon, like it's already insane. You know, the technology you're using.
Yeah, I agree with that. So diminishing returns. The Switch is now catching up.
And the thing is, I feel like what OEMs used to do is, okay, if we're on a 4 nanometer chip, then we move to a 2 nanometer chip. Now we can actually, have better battery life and pass it on. That's what they did with the Switch OLED, right?
Yeah, which is what I'm sure
And the
they'll do
revised
again.
version of the Switch. But at this point, like, how expensive is it to go from 3 nanometers to 2 nanometers to like 1.1 like angstrom or whatever? And
Yeah.
it's like it's getting harder and harder.
It is. It is harder, and I don't know. I'll be curious to know what type of iterations they have for the Switch 2 now going forward, because based on prior history, they've done it before, like I said with the Switch OLED. But will they do that now? We're at
I
a point where
totally
it's
think
like,
so. I think they're going to make a Switch OLED
I
550.
hope, I hope. But yeah, again, the question is price. We'll see.
And I think that Nintendo, unfortunately, is it's like the canary in the coal mine. That old saying. They're the ones who are going to get all the flack for what the whole industry has to do.
Yeah.
Because or else the numbers just won't work for them.
Yeah, they're going to set the standard.
And I mean, it sucks to say even movies have gone crazy expensive. You go to a movie theater, you're spending easy $13 to $15 nowadays.
It's a lot. It's a lot. That's why I try to go on Tuesdays at MGR for $5 tickets. The other thing I want to talk about, another thing that was announced was the game key cartridges. So this is interesting. I don't really like it. I think it's kind of bullshit, but essentially, the game key cartridges is a way to effectively replace having digital codes in a physical box. So right now, what's pretty common amongst third parties on Nintendo Switch is sometimes you can buy a game. I did this by accident. I didn't even know. I bought Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope or whatever it was called, the sequel to the first game. And I opened it up and there was a fucking digital code in there. I thought there was going to be a physical cartridge. I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't realize this. And I was so pissed because I like to collect physical cartridges. This replaces that, where the physical cartridge will now exist if someone wants a digital code, but it's just a license on the cartridge and you still have to download the game via the internet. And why I think this is bullshit is because for this generation now, Nintendo's saying we're still retaining the same size cartridges, the 32 gig and only the 64 gig. 64 gig cartridge is not even common. So if you use it, you have to spend a lot of money as the developer to say, like, we want to put our game on it. Because it's more expensive to put games on a cartridge than it is on a disc. Okay? So it's annoying that they couldn't find a way to get 128 gig cartridges.
But they could do 2 cartridges.
Or 2 cartridges. Like, sometimes get 2 discs or 3 discs. Like a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or a Horizon Forbidden West. So it's just pissing me off that they couldn't find a solution for that. They're like, oh yeah, now we'll just let third-party developers say they'll have a physical cartridge, but it's actually just a license. Now, granted, you can still sell this shit, but I'd rather have the game be played off the cartridge. The whole point was, like, the one thing I like about Nintendo is you put a cartridge in, you don't need to be connected to the internet, you can just play it.
Yeah, I think so. That's one thing that annoys me. Like, if now I have to be connected to the internet to play, that's going to annoy me. But I actually think the cartridges are a good idea because to me, it's inevitable. Like, I can be unhappy about the fact that, the way things used to be for us is gone. But the thing is, physical media is dying, and it's only a matter of time until all physical media dies. And the only people who have anything physical are people who are willing to pay a big premium to make it a collector's.
Yeah.
And I think eventually we're going to get to the point where it's always just going to be digital and then collectors.
Yeah.
And they're going to have some extra things in there. And I think, again, if anyone was going to do this, it was going to be Nintendo.
Nintendo.
Think about how much Nintendo hates people having ROMs and having things like that.
It was to pirate.
Nintendo is
stop piracy.
Even more so than Sony. They are the walled garden. Like, they are Apple, and so they were going to do it. And I will say, like, I think the way the game cartridges work, especially if I'm remembering, like, for like sending games to friends, like the borrowing and the loaning and stuff like that, that is an advancement. So at least we're getting something that's better. But I mean, yeah, it's
still, like I said, it's still annoying because you should be forcing I feel like, to preserve games, you should be forcing your developers, third-party developers, to say, you're going to put on a cartridge, we'll give you bigger sized options, we're going to invest in the ecosystem, and now you can get it out there. But that's just me, because I like to collect physical games. And now going forward, any games that I like, for example, one that was just announced was Cyberpunk. It will be fully playable on the cartridge, but they announced they're going to use the 64 gig cartridge, which again is barely used. So they're going to eat the cost on the cartridge. But you know what? I'm going to buy it. I'm not going to ever play it on the Switch 2 because it's going to play like garbage. But the fact that I know I have it on a physical cartridge entices me to buy it and hold on to it as a collector.
No, I feel you. It's just, I think, like, Microsoft got a lot of crap for this with Xbox One. And then, but as time has gone on, I think the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Like, even though I think everyone will objectively say that we want to have the option,
Yeah.
and physical is better.
But the numbers small.
The numbers are saying, man, people are really getting digital.
Yeah.
You know, and some of the games that I bought, I actually regret buying them digitally. Like Horizon, Forbidden West. I wish I'd actually gotten a physical copy.
Mm-hmm.
But the convenience was so nice.
Yeah, you just
where I was like, I don't want to get out of my house. I don't want to drive and buy the game. I don't want to order it and wait for it to come here.
Preload it before.
Game is out. I want to play. And I'm sick and tired of watching all these YouTube videos and reviews. Let's go.
And the thought of saying 20 years from now, oh, what if I wanted to replay that game and now I can't because I don't have internet access or the back office is shut down? How likely is that to happen? 20 years from now, are you really going to be like, oh, that one game, Last of Us Part 2, am I really... Like, no. You beat it, you played it, you're going to watch some clips on YouTube.
So I get that. It's just like, we're used to, something different, And, I mean, you've seen my anime collection. I have so many. So I get that, you know.
And again, I understand game preservation is important, but I don't look at it from that perspective. I just like the fact that you can play it off a cartridge. It's the convenience of, yes, I do have to swap in a cartridge, but I don't have to connect to the internet and I don't have to download it a patch. Most of it's there.
I hope that doesn't become a thing for all the Nintendo games, because that's one of the most annoying things about the Xbox and the PlayStation.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so I guess we can finish up the show just talking about what we're looking forward to the most. So, Arjun, in the next month, or even let's say 2 weeks, what are you looking forward to the most?
Towerborn. I know that's kind of been in a early preview state, and it's finally coming to Xbox Game Pass on the 29th, I believe, of April. Looks fun, kind of like up my alley, so I'm going to try it for sure. I don't know if it's the full release or if it's still like a early access.
I think it's early access.
It's early because it's only on PC. Right?
Yeah, but I think people have said really good things about it. I know I was kind of hyped for it initially, and then that kind of died down because no one was really talking about it for a while. There was no coverage. I think that would be a fun game to play together.
Yeah, I'm down to play that game. So that's about it. That's all I'm looking forward to until Doom comes.
So I cannot wait for Clair Obscure. I think that might be a Game of the Year contender. I think it's going to be massive. I mean, you never know until it's actually there, but I think this has, all of the pieces needed to be like a solid 9 out of 10 or more. Because I think people did not realize that JRPGs, that are turn-based could use a revolution, right? And they found a way to do it, and it's actually not just a JRPG, it's a French RPG, right? So I really think that's going to be a huge success. I think I'm going to enjoy the hell out of the game. I think that's going to eat up so much of my time. So I'm trying to clean up things right now. I'm trying to really finish South of Midnight. Maybe we'll get the finished Split Fiction so that I can really just, devote my time to Clair Obscure and then Doom. And if Oblivion comes out as well, then, my wife's not going to see me for a while. So, all right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up this show. So we'll catch you guys around.
Yeah, see you guys.